let's give a very warm welcome to Carly Fiorina.
This girl is on fire! This girl is on fire!
Thank you. Thank you so much for that very warm New Hampshire welcome. I'm so delighted to be with you here today. You know, when I was a little girl, my mother one Sunday morning in Sunday school looked at me and said, "What you are is God's gift to you. What you make of yourself is your gift to God." It seemed like a promise that I had God-given gifts, and it seemed like a challenge as well, that I needed to find them and use them. I would go on eventually to enroll in Stanford University, where I would graduate with a degree in medieval history and philosophy. Exactly, all dressed up and nowhere to go. So I went off to law school. That's what my dad thought I'd be good at. I hated law school. And I quit after less than a single semester. So now I needed to go back and earn a living. So I started to do full-time what I had done part-time to help put myself through school. I was a secretary. I used to be a Kelly girl when I was at Stanford to help pay the bills. I typed and filed. Yes, Kelly girls unite, right? I typed and filed and answered the phones. And so I went to the want ads. I accepted the first job I was offered, which was to type and file for a little 9-person real estate firm. I have lived all over the world, traveled and worked all over the world. And I know that it is only in the United States of America that a young woman can start as a secretary and go on to become the chief executive of the largest technology company in the world. That is only possible here. And it's possible here because our founders knew what my mother taught me. Our founders knew that everyone has God-given gifts. And they built a nation on the belief that everyone has the right to find and use their gifts. Everyone has the right to fulfill their potential. That's what they meant when they said life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And they said that that right comes from God and should not be taken away by man or government. My husband Frank has lived the American story. He started out as a tow truck driver in a family-owned auto body shop in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And I met this morning in the Surf restaurant here in Nashua, I met Michael Buckley, who also has lived the American story. He started as a dishwasher, and now he owns 5 restaurants. I have traveled and lived and spoken to people all across this country, and I must tell you that I sense a deep disquiet. People fear we are losing something. What they fear we are losing is the sense of limitless possibility that has always defined this nation. And when we lose that sense of limitless possibility, we're losing the core of who we are. I know from experience that there is a look that people get in their eyes when they accomplish more than they thought was possible. And there is the opposite of that look. I saw the opposite of that look in our daughter Lori Ann's eyes as she battled the demons of addiction and ultimately lost that battle. It is the flat look of hopelessness. But it is not just addiction or death that wastes potential. I see that look in too many Americans' eyes now. I see it in the look of men in the Central Valley of California whose lives and livelihoods have been destroyed because bureaucrats have decided they should manage what scarce water there is from Washington, D.C. I see that flat, hopeless look in a young woman whose life has become entangled in a web of dependence from which she cannot escape even if she tries. I have seen it in the eyes of a small business owner who gives up. And that look, that flat-eyed look of hopelessness cannot define this nation. The truth is this: our government has become so big, so powerful, so costly, and so corrupt that the weight of the government is literally crushing the potential of the people of this nation. We see it in lackluster economic growth numbers, 2%. We see it in the fact that our labor participation rates are at levels not seen since the mid-70s. We see it in people's lives who are tangled up in that web of dependence. We see it in the fact that for the first time in U.S. history, we are now destroying more businesses than we are creating. And while we celebrate in the world of technology people like Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, the truth is the heroes of the American economy have always been the person who opens up the 9-person real estate firm, the person who opens up the family-owned auto body shop, the nail salon, the restaurant, the lawn service company. These are the heroes of the American economy because small businesses and family-owned businesses create 2/3 of the new jobs in this country and employ half the people. And so when we crush small and family-owned businesses, we are crushing the potential of this nation. And at the same time, crony capitalism is alive and well. Because when you have a government that is so big, so powerful, so costly, so complex, and so corrupt, only the big can handle it. I know that, having been the CEO of a $90 billion business. I may not have liked regulations, but I could hire accountants and lawyers and lobbyists. The 9-person real estate firm, not so much. And so the consequence is what? When we pass a law like Dodd-Frank, what happened? 10 banks too big to fail became 5 banks too big to fail. And meanwhile, 3,000 community banks have gone out of business, because those community banks are not big enough or rich enough to deal with all of the complexity and the power that Washington, D.C. gives them. People fear that we are losing that sense of limitless possibility that has always defined our nation, but people also worry that we are missing something important. And what I think people think we're missing is leadership. You know, here's the truth. Here's the truth. Our government has gotten bigger and bigger every year for 50 years. Every year. Every agency has gotten more money. Yes, it has gotten worse under President Obama, but the truth is it has been getting bad for 40 or 50 years. People feel disconnected from the political process because they feel like nothing changes. When did we decide that we needed a political class? Ours was intended to be a citizen government. That is what by, for, and of the people means. What we need in this country is citizenship and leadership. I am reminded, when I think about our federal government, I am reminded of the difference between management and leadership. Managers are people who do the best they can within the existing system. There are managers in business, there are managers in politics, there are managers in life. They do the best they can within the existing system. Leaders are people who do not accept what is broken just because it's been that way for a very long time. And now we need the leadership and the citizenship to reimagine our government. Not just because it's so big and so powerful and so costly and so corrupt, but because it is failing now to serve the citizens who pay for it. And nowhere is this more clear than in the example of the Veterans Administration. Technology can do amazing things today. I happen to be chairman of Opportunity International, the largest microfinance organization in the world. I can send a $150 loan to a desperately poor woman in India or in Malawi. But if you are a veteran and you have served our nation, you have to spend months filling out paperwork and many more months waiting for some bureaucrat to check the paperwork to make sure you've earned already the benefits that you've fought and served for, and then you got to wait many more months while some other bureaucrat decides whether you can get an appointment or not. And this has been going on for a long time. The VA has been undergoing a major systems upgrade since 1989. I come from the world of technology. If you're still going through a major systems upgrade for 20 years, you have failed. You have failed. And when the scandal of the Veterans Administration in Arizona broke, what happened? The political process responded to pressure. Within 3 weeks, they had passed a bipartisan bill that said, you know what, we're going to fire. We're going to let the VA administrator fire the top 400 senior executives at the VA if they're not doing their jobs. It's not that that's a bad idea. Maybe we should do it all throughout government. It's just, really? That's the best we can do? And we haven't heard a lot about the VA for quite a while, and yet it is still broken, and now we have bureaucrats arguing about whether 40 miles is as the crow flies or the car drives. The Veterans Administration is a stain on our nation's honor. And it is an example of why we must reimagine government. Let me just take a moment. How many of you are here as veterans? Would you please stand up so we can celebrate your service? Thank you for your service. And speaking of leadership, nowhere is leadership missing more than in the world. The world is a more dangerous and a more tragic place when America is not leading, and America has not led for quite some time. You've heard me say this before, I will say it again. Like Hillary Clinton, I too have traveled hundreds of thousands of miles around the globe, but unlike Mrs. Clinton, I know that flying is an activity, not an accomplishment. I have met Vladimir Putin, and anyone who has sat across the table from a Vladimir Putin knows that his ambitions will not be thwarted by a gimmicky red reset button. I remember sitting in Bibi Netanyahu's office 5 years ago, a private meeting, my husband Frank, myself, and Bibi Netanyahu, no one else. And you know what he wanted to talk about? Iran and the dangers that Iran represents. I have done business with the Chinese. I understand that they are engaging in cyber warfare, that they are stealing our intellectual property as a matter of strategy. I have chaired the advisory board at the Central Intelligence Agency, and I know that we confront many dangerous enemies, but I also know that there are many things our allies have asked us to do that we are not doing, and every one of them would make a difference in the world today. Hillary Clinton must not be President of the United States. I was asked this morning on Fox News whether a woman's hormones prevented her from serving in the Oval Office. Not that we have seen examples ever of a man's judgment being clouded by hormones, including in the Oval Office. Hillary Clinton cannot be President of the United States, but not because she is a woman. Hillary Clinton must not be President of the United States because she does not have a track record of accomplishment, because she lacks the candor and the transparency that are so necessary to leadership, and because she will pursue a set of policies that crush possibilities and the potential of this great nation. All our problems are solvable. All of our wounds are self-inflicted. We have everything we need, because all we need is citizenship and leadership. We rightly celebrate our founding fathers, as we should. But I will remind you that two of the most powerful symbols of our blessed and beautiful nation are women. Lady Liberty and Lady Justice. Lady Liberty stands. She is clear-eyed. She is resolute. She holds her torch like a beacon of hope in the world. And Lady Justice, she holds a sword in one hand. because she is a fighter. She is a warrior for the values and the principles that have made this nation great. She holds a scale in the other hand. And with that scale, she says, all of us are equal in the eyes of God, and so all of us must be equal in the eyes of the law, powerful and powerless alike. And she wears a blindfold. She wears a blindfold. And I think with that blindfold, she says to us, it does not matter who you are. It does not matter where you come from. It does not matter what you look like or what your circumstances are. Here, every American's life is defined by possibilities with liberty and justice for all. And so let us rise together to meet our challenges. Let us rise together and restore the promise of this, the greatest nation the world has ever known. God bless you, and may God continue to bless the great nation of the United States of America. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I think we have time for a few questions. All right, he's making his way through with the microphone.
Carly, is that working? Great. Thank you. My name is Dr. Pam Brill. I'm a businesswoman like yourself. I work for Velcro Industries. We still produce and manufacture in New Hampshire, and we're global. Yay, New Hampshire.
Yes, yay, New Hampshire.
My question for you is this. You led a high-pressure company. You faced corporate threats, internal and external. I believe that that positions you uniquely to make the decisions that need to be made in a political office as we face threats that are global, including Iran. Could you speak to this? Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, I do think that the next occupant of the Oval Office needs to understand how the economy actually works. I think they need to understand how the world works and who's in it. I think they need to understand bureaucracies and how they work and how you change them. I think they need to understand technology, and to your point, I think they need to understand executive decision-making. And executive decision-making is making a tough call in a tough time with high stakes for which you are prepared to be held accountable. You don't study that in a briefing book. You learn that over a lifetime of experience. Iran is an interesting challenge now. It is a grave threat to the world. I've never negotiated an Iranian nuclear deal, but I've negotiated plenty of deals. And there's certain cardinal rules about negotiating good deals, and they apply to every situation. Rule number one, know what your goals are and don't accept a deal until you've achieved those goals. The president laid out 3 very clear goals for his negotiation with Iran. We have failed to achieve a single one. Not a single nuclear facility will be dismantled. Not a single one of 19,000 centrifuges will go away. And whereas Iran at one point agreed that they would ship some of their fissile material out to Russia, now we're going to leave it here in Iran. Rule number 2 in a negotiation, be prepared to walk away from the table. We have never walked. We have never walked, despite the fact that deadline after deadline after deadline has been passed, and despite the fact that the Iranians have never agreed to unfettered inspections as a unanimously passed UN resolution calls for them to do so. And the final rule, of course, is do not celebrate victory until you have the deal you want. So when the President of the United States takes to the Rose Garden and celebrates a framework agreement, what do the Iranians conclude? Good, he's publicly committed to this no matter what, so we're going to spend the next 2 months making a bad deal for the U.S. even worse for them. If it were me, I would stop talking immediately. I would put all the sanctions on that we could unilaterally, and we can do quite a bit because we control a lot of the access to the global financial system, and I would not talk to them again until they had agreed to full, unfettered inspections of every single nuclear facility they have. Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
I met you at Politics and X before.
Yes.
And ever since, I wanted to tell you that you are an inspiration to all women, especially to young women like myself.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm following the man with the mic.
Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. As a young woman and as a college student, people on my campus blindly follow Hillary Clinton. And I've heard people say all over on my college campus that they will vote for Hillary Clinton because she's a woman. And they cannot name a single accomplishment that she has. So how will you reach out to college students, and especially young women, and tell them that you're the choice and Hillary Clinton cannot be president? Thank you.
Well, wouldn't it be good if we gave those young women a choice? And by the way, maybe you can help educate some of those young women and young people that there is a choice. You know, one of the reasons that I think a lot of young people, and a lot of women actually, have disengaged from the political process is because they think it has nothing to do with them. And of course, it has everything to do with them. Because the policies that politicians pursue impact everybody's life. And in particular, they're impacting the lives of people your age. Because you are the ones who are going to take on, if we're not careful here, unbelievable debt and deficits and a bureaucracy that truly has forgotten who is there to serve. Young people that I've talked to and women that I've talked to, and it's, you know, it's interesting to know that women are 53% of the voting public today. Women are the majority. But a lot of women disengage from the process. We found out when we were here working in New Hampshire last year on our Unlocking Potential project because they don't like how it sounds. They think it seems pretty hopeless. You know, everybody's arguing back and forth, sound bites are thrown back and forth, nothing seems to change. And so they say, there's nothing I can do about it. I will tell you a story that to me crystallizes it perfectly, why people disengage. It's not that people don't care. It's that they think they don't count. And so we have to make sure that everyone understands, yes, indeed, you do count. I was in a homeless women's shelter in New York City several weeks ago in association with one of the charities I lead. And I was speaking to a homeless woman there, and she said, you know, those politicians, just what she did, those politicians, they're up there in their world and they're talking in their language and they don't know anything about us down here. The only trouble is all the things they're doing up there, they land on us down here. That's as good a description as the disconnection of citizens from the political class as I've ever heard. And so one of the things I promise to do is engage citizens in the political process. And we have so many exciting ways to do it. I mentioned understanding technology. Technology gives us an incredibly powerful tool to reimagine government, but also to re-engage citizens in the process of government. You want a funny example? Except it's not so funny when you think about it. How many people vote for American Idol every week? How many? I know some of you in this room do. Maybe you don't want to admit it, but you do. You do, right? Well, why can't we use that tool to ask the American people directly a whole set of questions? Do you think it's okay that somebody in the federal government can watch pornography all day long and earn exactly the same pay, pension, and benefits as somebody trying to do a good job? Do you think that's okay? Please vote. 1 for yes, 2 for no. That would put political pressure on the system. And you know what I would do with the VA? I would ask 10, 25-year-old veterans. I would put them in a room and I would say, you tell me how you want to be served. And we would end up with a blueprint of how to serve the heroes of this nation that would make anything the bureaucrats at the VA have done for the last 10 years look just like what it is, mediocre. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Lynn Bishop.
Hi, Lynn.
And I would like to ask you, how would you solve, or how do you think the water problem in California should be solved? I think California is the greatest place on earth. I used to live there. And, and what would you do for the farmers? It seems like an intractable problem. And secondly, just want to mention, there are some VA institutions, one of them in Manchester, New Hampshire, that are absolutely wonderful. My husband goes to Manchester VA for all his health care. I want to say they're fantastic. Maybe they could do a little best practice sharing.
Wouldn't that be nice? That's what we do, you know, in the rest of the world. If we find somebody who's doing something really well, we hold that up as an example and we say, look, other people should do this same thing. Great example. Repeat the first part of your question for me. I got off on the VA, thinking about the Manchester VA. Oh, the farmers. Yes, oh, how could I forget? My husband and I moved back home to Virginia several years ago, so we no longer live there. But let me just take a moment and explain to you the tragedy of California, because it is an example of politicians deciding that their ideology trumps someone else's life and livelihood. California has suffered from droughts for centuries. So, you know, if you knew you were going to have a drought every 10 years, you might think about taking advantage of the years when rain is falling, right? The population of California has doubled in the last 40 years. And yet, liberal environmental policies have intervened and prevented California from building a single new water reservoir or a single new water conveyance system. So imagine your population doubles and you don't do anything to save water for 40 years. Then, to add insult to injury, a bunch of liberal environmentalists say, you know, there's a little fish in something called the Delta, and that little fish, we think we're going to protect it, we need to protect it, so guess what? We're going to start managing the little water you have from Washington, D.C. And so what we have today, in good times and in bad, in rainfalls or in terrible droughts like they're having right now, 70% roughly of the rain
that falls every year flows out to sea. And so in the Central Valley, I have seen the devastation of 40% unemployment, acre upon acre upon acre of orchards and fields destroyed, the most productive agricultural farmland in the world, by politicians and policies. The answer to this is Californians figured out how to solve this problem. In the late 90s, they passed a bipartisan bill in California that balanced. Balance is so often the art of leadership, that balanced growth considerations, economic considerations, job considerations with the necessity to protect our environment. It was a balanced bill. It was passed. It had bipartisan support. And Washington, D.C. said, no, we're going to manage your water for you from Washington, D.C. Over and over and over in my life, I have learned this. Where there are problems, there are always people who understand how to solve them, but they need to be asked. And they are never the people from 3,000 miles away who know nothing about what's actually going on.
And this will be the last question.
Thanks, Matt. Carly, I'm very, very intrigued with your campaign and your remarks here today, and especially your professional background, your business acumen. I'm going to ask you to put on your business hat for a second and give us a business case. I really like what I see so far in Walker, Rubio, and Bush, 2 governors and a senator. Give us a business case for how you compare and contrast, and why should I be voting for you?
Wow, talk about a softball last question. Okay. First, let us say, how lucky are we as a party that we have such a broad field of so many qualified people? That's wonderful. And I think because we have such a broad field, this is going to be, in many ways, a process of elimination before it's a process of selection. But what I would say to you is this. I am different from anyone running in every respect. I have a completely different experience set. I have not been in politics all my life. And while there are many public servants who are fine public servants and politicians, the truth is politics is only one experience. I have lots of other experiences, not only in this country, but all over the world. I have a different perspective because of those experiences. I think I come at problem solving perhaps differently. I have a different voice. And oh, by the way, I look a little different too. And so I think, if you believe as I believe, that ours was not intended to be a government governed by a professional political class. Ours was intended to be a citizen government by, for, and of the people. And sometimes, people who have been inside a system for so long, they cannot see it for what it is anymore. They cannot see what is truly broken. They cannot see what can be done to change that system and to change the order of things for the better. I will promise you this. I understand that leadership is not about position or power or title or perks. The highest calling of leadership is to unlock potential in others and to change the order of things for the better. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen.
This girl is
Thank
on
you so
fire.
much.